Thank you for checking out part 2 of episode 15 featuring Mike Shisler. On today's episode, we will be talking about others who started their adventure in Alaska, tricks and tips for your bikepacking adventures, and cliffhangers. Here is part 2. Let's go.
So I had an idea. I was like, how about the next car that comes along going in my direction? I flagged them down and I asked them to pull over, and they did. And I said, here, I got an idea. There's a bear up ahead. Do you mind doing me a favor? And I was like, do you mind driving slowly, 10 miles an hour? And I'm going to bike in the left-hand lane, and I'm going to use your car as a buffer between me and the bear. And then once we're clear of the bear, thank you. I really appreciate your help, and I'll just go on. And so they agreed, and so that's exactly what we did. And so I said I've been told the bear is just across the bridge. It was just like a little stream crossing, and then there was a bridge and the bear. And so at 10 miles an hour, we kind of just crept along, and the bear was there, and it was right off the side of the road. There were maybe two of them actually, and it worked. So you got to be creative, and it feels like you're out there alone a lot of the time, but you're often not. I have several other stories in the book about people wanting to help, people offering things, and such kind and generous people out there are looking out for you, even though you might not know it or see them or know them. Especially in wild places, there are really really great people, and then you kind of see that mentality from Alaska, and then you get down into San Francisco or the Bay Area, and it's not there anymore. But that's fine. That's just the way
Yeah,
people are. Yeah.
yeah, definitely, especially when you get down to the lower 48. But the
Right.
one thing
Right.
that I love that you constantly quoted is the people up in Alaska, the mentality of up here we help when we can. I
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
that. And I feel like
Thanks.
that. Oh, no, go ahead.
Yeah. That was definitely a theme that I wanted to carry through, and I started off the book by actually telling a story of a friend who went to Alaska years ago, and he told me about his experience up there and how someone went out of their way to help him with a flat tire on his car. And this guy drove an hour back and an hour back this way with a compressor and fixed his tire and all that kind of stuff. And that was I heard that story years ago, and going into Alaska, I was like, maybe it's going to be true. Maybe it's not. Maybe that was a one-off kind of experience. But I found that in these wild, remote places, people are ready to help and eager to help, and they know what you're up against, and it goes both ways, because I met a guy up there, and I wanted to help too, and I was able to help him out in a lot of ways also.
I think it's so cool the opportunity that you got placed in, but then you took that up here we help when we can mentality and you sent it to Alaska before you've even been. So tell the listeners about Leo.
Yeah, yeah. So like I said, that packing for this trip, packing my bike was like a religious kind of experience, and I put a week into it of like just spreading everything out and packing, repacking, unpacking, weighing things, uh, just going through every last little detail, because I think preparing for a trip like this is the absolute, like, that's the first step. Without preparing, you're not going to make it. So here I was preparing for this trip, and I got a message online. I got a message on Instagram, and someone who was following me said, "Hey, I know you're getting ready for this trip. You should check out the account of this Brazilian cyclist named Leo." And he just arrived in Deadhorse, and he found out that in transit on the plane, his derailleur got busted, and he's up there right now, and he's kind of dead in the water. He doesn't know what to do. And I was like, "Oh, wow, this is crazy," because I'm going to be there in like 2 or 3 days, and I think I'm the only guy who can really help. I don't know if it's true, but I felt like the only person on a planet of 8 billion people. I was like, you know what? I'm a cyclist. I'm headed his way. I'm going to be there in 2 days, and I think I can help. And I was like, I'm excited. Let me help. And so I send Leo a message, and it takes a while to get to him, and there's a language barrier and all this kind of stuff. But I find out. I was like, hey, what part do you need? I'm coming. I'm coming for you, Leo. I'm going to be right there. What part do you need? And he said, yeah, it's a Shimano. It's a 10 speed. And I was like, all right, great. So I ran to the local bike shop on a Sunday. They were just about to close, and I was like calling them, and I was like, do you have the part? Do you have the part? And I had to go to a different shop, and finally I got this part. and I was able to like pack it up, and also at the same time I was like, oh, I didn't think to remove my derailleur. I was like, that's a thanks for the tip. I'm going to learn from your mistake, and I took my derailleur off, and I packed everything into the box, and then so the book actually starts here with what is it, page? That's the derailleur that I brought for him, and that was kind of the first sketch. The first sketch that I filled in my sketchbook was this derailleur, and I brought to Leo. So I was, I messaged him for a few days, and I would update him on my status. I was like, all right, I'm in Anchorage, and then I let him know when I got off the plane in Dead Horse. And I mean, getting off a plane in a place like that is crazy, because the airport in Dead Horse is no bigger than a bus stop, really. And I'm in there and trying to put everything back together on my bike and making sure there's no damage and packing everything up. And it took 2 hours, and I was like spread out on the floor of this little airport. Um, and then I biked about a mile to the hotel, and I got checked in, and then I sent him a message. I was like, hey, I'm here and I got your part. And yeah, he came by, and we like, it was so great to like kick off the trip with a friendly face, even though he's a stranger. I'd never met him before. Just meeting him, handing him that part. He was so excited, and he was like putting me on his YouTube and all that kind of stuff, and it was a really cool experience. And then I was like, hey, what else? What else do you need? Where are you at? What do you need? How, like, are you ready to ride? I said, I'm going to ride in the morning. I'm only here for 12 hours. I'm going to sleep and then get going. And I looked at his setup, and it was like, do you have gloves? Do you have like goggles or a hat or a face mask or anything like that? And he didn't. So he's from Brazil, and he packed, I guess, as a Brazilian would pack. And so he had flip flops, and he didn't really have the gear he needed. And so we put the derailleur on his bike and took a test ride. And we went out to this it's called Brooks Range Supply, and it's like the only store in town. It's a hardware store and a post office, a grocery store, and it's like just all in like one little building. It's a really fascinating place, and there's like a guy behind the counter, and he'll order you whatever you need. And at one point, Leo, he wanted an adapter for a Presta to a Schrader valve, those little screw-on brass things. And the guy was like, hey, I normally order like pipeline parts, but if you want it, I'm going to order it for you. And so he was able to like get that thing ordered. I think it was a waste, because it was going to take like 2 weeks to get there or something like that. But they again, like, they were willing to help. They want to help. So I took Leo out to the spot, and I was like showing him about gloves. He's like, I don't know what gloves to buy. And I was like, well, these ones look good. And he's like, how about these ones? And he went with the leather ones. And I was like, all right, that's good. And got him some bear spray and a face mask and all that. So it was such a really cool experience, meeting him.
Do you still like have contact with him?
Yeah, yeah. His story was fascinating. His story is he is. I mean, I've now found out he's a pretty big cyclist in Brazil, and he's got this massive following, and he's doing guided tours, and I don't even know what his full deal is, but he was trying to set a record on the Pan American route. So it's from Dead Horse to the southern tip of Argentina, and the record as it stood was 97 days to bike that distance, and he wanted to do it in 96. He was out to break the record, and it seemed like such an amazingly daunting task. And I can't remember all of his stats, but he was going to do like double the distance I was going to do every day, like 180 miles a day, day after day, or something like that. And he he the thing he like in the book, I said he lacked gloves and a bear canister and a food. He didn't even have a tent. He didn't have a sleeping bag. He didn't have all these things, but he had heart, and that was the one thing. Like, apparently, that's all you need, because he made it so far so fast. He left a couple days after me, and he passed me while I was doing an extra loop through Denali. I wanted to see Mount Denali, and I added on to my Alaska route. I didn't take just the shortest path. And so, well, while I was doing this extra loop, he passed me, and then I wouldn't see him for a while. And then we actually met up again in Northern California on 4th of July. And it was like this awful rainy day, but I was like, hey, we're so close to each other again. Let's meet up. And so he did. And, I just got to see him one more time. And then as I finished my ride, I followed his progress, and he was already through Central America or something like that. And then he was getting down into South America, and he was getting so close to finishing. And I think the clock was running down. He was like, all right, I got to do this many kilometers in this many days, and I don't know if it's going to work. And then he finally got to a point, maybe a week from the end, and he's like, it's not feasible. And he threw in the towel and he quit. And I was like, well, we all applaud you. Like that was an amazing effort. You destroyed your body, and there were like he was crying, and there was like it was such an emotional thing for him. And then I chatted with him while I was writing the book a few months later, and I say, hey, the book is almost done, and I want to like send you a copy. And we got chatting, and he said, yeah, that's cool. I'm actually going to try the ride again in like 2024. I was like, are you insane? Because to do that again, I was like, there are other rides in the world, like do something else or try it again or what, I don't know. But he wants to do it again, and I can't applaud him enough for that. He's got so much heart.
That's good because that was my next question was do you know when he's going to try to set it again because I want to like get ready for that cuz
Yeah,
I
yeah,
really hope he does it. It's amazing.
right. I know. And it's just an amazing ride that I don't know too much about other rides in the world, rides from China to Europe or something like that. I'm sure there are similar rides, but this one crosses, it's from the Arctic to the equator back to the like to the Antarctic. It's just such a drastic variety of landscape and terrains and also cultures and countries, and so much is involved. That's an amazing route. I'm sure the guys who do around the world, it's a very similar thing. But so he was trying to break the record on that ride. And then throughout, while I was up in Alaska and up in Canada, I met a good number of other people doing the exact same ride. Obviously slower. They were going to take 2 years to do it. Often they were like a couple, trying to do this ride together or something like that, and taking 2 years to ride from Alaska to Argentina slowly and kind of poking their way through. But again, it's all of them are amazing undertakings.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's awesome. I'd love to do that, especially like I think that's the right move to go from Alaska down because then you can take all your cold weather gear and then if you want to ditch the weight, just throw it away or give it to someone and then just keep going.
You're going to need it again down in Chile. If
Oh,
you
that's
start
true because you got elevation. Yeah.
if you start summer in Alaska, it's now winter in South America. Yeah.
Well, see, I'd be screwed, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, people have asked me, they were like, what's next? Where do you want to go next? And I'm going to stick. I have some more future plans in mind, but I'm going to stick to this whole North American thing. I think just for my own safety, security, comfort, really, sleeping outside, often stealth camping or things like that, it's hard enough in a place where I know the country, I know the language, I know the culture, and I know the people. Uh, Transporting that to somewhere where I don't speak the language and I don't know the culture, it just seems way, way too overwhelming for me. So I applaud anyone who does it, but I'm going to stick to North America for now.
Yeah, I'm with you. There's a lot on my list too, especially like the new East Divide and stuff like that that goes all the way from like Nova Scotia down to Florida and
Right.
stuff.
Yep.
Like I think that'd be awesome. All the way across the country would be awesome. Yeah, like out west, the Great Divide. There's so many in North America to do.
Exactly.
And I'm with you. Like I would probably try to translate something and it would come off wrong or something like
Yeah.
that and then just get murdered or something. I don't
I
know. But
I took a
yeah, I'm with
I
you.
took a semester in Rome back in college, and I was in Italy. And me and another guy was like, "Hey, we got 4 days off from school. Let's ride from Rome to Florence. Let's do it." We both had like these really cheap, crappy bikes, no panniers or bags, but we had backpacks. I was like, "Let's do it. We can make it." And within like 2 days of that trip, we were like the really short story is the police found us on the side of the road. They said, "We're going to put you in handcuffs. You got to get off the highway right now." And I was like, "Oh, fine." So we threw our bikes over the guardrail, like down into a farmer's field. And we were like, "What now? What? Like, what do we do? Like, there's no roads. We don't know where to go." And so the whole trip fell apart. We ended up taking a train back to Rome and like with our tail between our legs. But it was still an amazing experience. But just that one story of like I tried and it didn't work.
Yeah, that's hysterical. But sucks, but
Yeah.
hysterical. That's funny.
Yeah, right, right.
So now, out of all the miles that you covered, what was the move? Like, how did you stay in tune to the road and everything? Did you listen to audiobooks, music, like, or did you just listen to nature? Because I know that when I ride really early in the morning, like 4 o'clock or whatever, and it's really dark out, like I won't have anything in my ears just so I can hear. I can't tell you how many countless times I've had a deer run out in front of me or something. But like, what would you do over the hours and miles of your days?
Yeah, there were. I think the short answer is a lot of podcasts. And sometimes I feel like I want to get into these situations and find this like spiritual centering of, mind and body and kind of get in touch with what is really inside of me. And then at other times, I'm like, this, you can't spend, in the big picture, I'm alone without really talking or communicating with like anyone in a real deep sense for weeks on end. And so in order to keep a little bit of sanity and keep a little bit of like groundedness, I listened to a lot of podcasts, certainly some music. I had a bunch of stuff downloaded for when I was out of service. And that's kind of the short answer. But there were times where I just kind of listened to the road and listened to the silence. But um, just a lot of time. It's so much time and space out there.
Yeah.
Um, and then also like I'm sometimes oh, well, so while I was riding, I was trying to film. I would carry a GoPro. I do a lot of filming. Those I would It was kind of cool. So I would do these short little clips of the road or the scenery or whatever, trying to tell the story through a GoPro video. And then I was actually editing and uploading videos from the road. So I would take one stretch of road like the Dalton Highway, and I would do a video on that, and then do one on the Denali Highway and do one on the Richardson Highway. And so I would take these 3 or 4 or 5 day segments, edit them into a video, do a voiceover like from my tent at night. It was like crazy. So I would like edit the video, watch it one night, write out a script, and then the next night I would record it, do the voiceover, and add some music and get it posted all from the road. So like that took up a lot of time at night in the tent, and just always gave me something to do. And then during the day I would be drawing and sketching and doing that kind of stuff as well. So but
So how did you edit the video? Did you edit it on your phone?
yeah, the GoPro app on the phone is amazing.
Okay.
It's The secret is I only film in like 10-second, no more than a 10-second clip. Sometimes I'll film a 5-second clip. That way you go back and you can select the best 2 seconds out of that 10-second clip, and then you kind of piece them together. And it does a really good job of syncing music and making transitions. And then I take it from the GoPro app, export it into like iMovie, and that's where I do the voiceovers, and then export from there. So
Yeah, and if it's 10 seconds, it doesn't take as long to download from the GoPro
right,
to
right.
the phone.
Yeah, but some people are like,
Yeah.
oh, you should just mount it on your handlebars and record everything. I'm like, I don't want to watch it twice, like there's no time for that. So
Yeah. And so then how did you keep everything charged?
I had a giant battery pack, and the idea basically on trips like this, for me anyway, is I like to camp maybe 3, 4, 5 nights in a row, and then get a hotel on that fourth or fifth night.
Mm.
And that gives me a chance to get a good meal, get a shower, do some laundry, and recharge all my stuff. So this battery pack would get me through about 4 nights, 4 full days on the road. And
That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. And then
Yeah, that's perfect.
so that was the plan. And then actually, once I hit Washington State, I didn't get any more hotels the whole way down the West Coast. But the campgrounds in Washington, Oregon, and California are top-notch campgrounds. I'm not sure if you're familiar with hiker biker sites. So in these state campgrounds down the coast, not every state campground has it, but there's a select number, and they've spaced them out a pretty good distance. That a normal state campground, you show up and you might pay $35 or $50 or whatever, and if they're booked up, you're like, well, there's no sites left. But they have this kind of stipulation where if you arrive by foot or arrive on a bike, they have a special section set aside for hikers and bikers, and they really can't turn you away because they'll just you take up no footprint, and they charge like $5 or $7, and then you can just camp there and you get a shower, and sometimes you can plug in a device or something like that. So those hiker biker sites are really really invaluable on a trip like this.
So if people were smart, they would go park at the closest Walmart, take their tents, and then bike to the campground and leave their car at Walmart every night, and then
E-
they're like $5, $7.
exactly. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
possible. Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so one thing that I noticed about your book and your trip, and I guess just about you, is that your time management, like I like that you appreciated what you were going to see on your trip, and you made, like, you had the proper time management to get there and to see the stuff, and then you also made big decisions along the trip as well.
Mhm.
But how did you feel when you decided to kind of skip Canada and to take the boat to Washington? Like, did you, I don't want to like put words in your mouth, but did you feel defeated or anything? Or like what were the emotions? Because I could only imagine what that would feel like.
Yeah. Yeah. So, for people who haven't read the book yet, the plan was to bike all the way from Alaska, from Dead Horse to San Diego, and that would take me through. I'm looking at the cover of the book here, and that would take me through all of Yukon and all of British Columbia. And that section, as I was leaving Alaska into Yukon, I was getting very emotionally overwhelmed and kind of depressed, and things weren't going well. And my mental state of Alaska, in Alaska, I was optimist, and I was feeling good, and everything was good. And even if the weather was crappy, or my legs hurt, or my back was sore, or whatever it was, I still felt like everything was going to be okay when I was in Alaska. And then I started leaving Alaska into the Yukon, and I was like, man, something's not right. Like I was starting to get like, regardless, I was getting flat tires, and I was doing these other things, and things weren't starting to, the bike wasn't shifting well, and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, I just need to get to Whitehorse. Whitehorse is the capital of Yukon, and it's the biggest city. And I was like, I'll get there and I'll reset for a few days, and that's what I really needed. And I was just listening to my mind and my body, and I said, all right, I need to take a break. And it's been 3 long weeks of remote wilderness, and like no food options, and everything was very hard. Rewarding too, but I was getting into the Yukon, and I said, I need to take a break, and I need to kind of reset a little bit. And then I looked at the map, and I was like, it's still like 2 full weeks of riding, like nonstop, like 1,500 miles or 1,000 miles till I get to Seattle from here. And I had all these things starting to pile up, and the list kept getting longer and longer of the challenges and the hurdles and the obstacles. And so I said, you know what, maybe I've looked at Alaska and I've hit all the highlights, and I saw the mountains, and I saw the glaciers, and I saw the bears and the moose, and everything was what I wanted out of this northern adventure. I got in Alaska. And then I looked at the Alaska Highway, which runs from I guess it runs from Montana up to Alaska or something like that. But I was going to be on that Alaska Highway for miles and miles, and just days on end of one road kind of cutting through these trees. And I felt like it was very uninspiring, and it was just raw miles of trudgery, basically. And I just wasn't feeling it. I wasn't excited and happy anymore. So I said, you know what, I'm on this trip for me. I'm not, this is my adventure. I'm not committed to anyone else, or committed to something that to do something I really don't want to do. So it was there in Whitehorse. I made a decision to backtrack back into Alaska and make my way down to Skagway, which is a really beautiful town. Which I would have. There were so many. Once I made this decision to leave Whitehorse and take a ferry from Skagway to Bellingham, Washington, the whole thing flipped around 180 degrees. My outlook changed. The weather improved. The scenery was mind blowing. I met incredible people. I spent a couple days resting in Skagway, and everything just kind of like flipped. And I made this decision, and I look back like I'm so happy that I made that decision. And yes, I cut out a lot of miles. I cut out 1,000 miles of the ride. Um, but then also that brought me back. That brought the total back down to 3,000 miles, which was my sweet spot anyway. So, in the end, at one point I would tell people about this ride, and I'd be, oh, a bike from Alaska to San Diego, and they'd be like, well, did you really? And I was like, yes, I did, and I took a boat for one section of it, but Um, anyway, I biked the United States. I'll say that. I biked all of Alaska, all of the West Coast. Screw Canada. That's the way I did it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And you kind of said something that's resonating with me right now is that when you were like, this trip was for me, one thing that last year was a down year for me because I think I got too into the Strava realm and the trying to impress people realm and stuff. And I turned the bike into this milestone generator kind of.
Hmm.
But instead, I turned it and burned it until it didn't not bring me as much happiness as it once did. So now it's like reading your book and stuff. Like I know that's where I found the most joy. And so that's why honestly I'm excited that I started the year off by reading your book
Yeah.
is because now I'm like I see that joy from your standpoint and I'm like, "Oh, that's it reminds me of the bike packing trips that I've taken and stuff." I'm like, "Oh, that was okay, that's what it's about. That's what brings me happiness and the bike is supposed to bring me happiness and it will bring others happiness like riding with other people and stuff, but ultimately like it's for me and I know that's selfish, but like you just got to do it for you."
Yeah, you can measure it in whatever metric you want. You can measure it in total miles ridden this year. You can measure it in, how many great climbs you had, or the speed, or the how many days in a row you rode, or whatever. Just for me, I measure it in a metric of where did I go, what did I see, what did I paint, where did it take me. It gave me the opportunity to write a book. It gave me the opportunity to meet people, even though I'm pretty solo and introverted out there on the road. But it opened these doors, and yes, I kept the Strava stats, but I don't look at them, and they didn't really matter. Even in the book, I kind of considered, do I even put? I think somewhere on like the very last page, I wrote down like the number of miles and the average daily distances and all that kind of stuff. But that's only because people asked. That was kind of the one of the things that people always wanted to know. But I'd be fine writing the book and leaving that out because that wasn't the point. That was not what I really got excited about.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, those are very impressive numbers. We'll get to that in a second. But so as you were talking about like skipping Canada and stuff, also, I just want to know like as you're planning for, did you plan for the day, or did you just go out and like I have to get like I'm just going to ride, and then how did you figure out where your stops were going to be? Because I know that the stops are very limited. You have usually just like general store food or whatever along the
Hmm.
way. But is there any planning that can go into like I know there's going to be this town there, or like I know there's going to be this store, or is it when you see something you stop and then you're just going to eat as much food as you can and then just keep riding?
Yeah, it's hard. It's so planning a trip like this is so hard over these distances. I'd say generally speaking, assuming I have cell service, that's also a variable. You don't always have cell service, and sometimes that's a whole different discussion. But let's say I wake up and I have cell service, I'll map out my day and I'll say, all right, what is 80 miles from here? What is 100 miles, and what is 120 miles from here? And maybe there's a campground or a town in those distances. And then, as the day goes on, maybe it was more hilly than I expected, and I'm only going to do the 80 miles, and that's where I'll be that night. Um, and then, you just kind of like look at a map and you say, oh, this town looks like, two or three roads are coming together. This probably is a decent spot. There's probably a restaurant or a gas station, or some fast food or something. And you just kind of take it day by day. And I can't plan out every day, or at the most, I might plan 2 days, 3 days in advance. But then once I started coming down the West Coast from Washington to California, that the data became so much more rich in that area, and I could plan out exactly which campground I was going to hit. I knew which ones had hiker bikers. I knew, I'd already driven to a lot of those places before. I've been up and down the coast, so I knew what to expect in these certain towns in these certain areas. So that was a whole lot easier. But up in Alaska, there was situations where I'd be on let's say the Denali Highway. It's this stretch of 200 miles or so, and it's just all dirt, and it's a seasonal road. It closes in the winter. There's no reason to keep this road open, and so there's really nothing on it. There's no cell service, and I said, I've got enough food, and I'm crossing all these streams. I've got enough food and I've got enough water, and I can kind of camp wherever I want. It's open area. It's public lands or something like that, and so it wasn't a big deal. But in situations like that, I would, if I saw a camp, if I was getting tired, it's getting towards the end of the day, I felt like I had a good day's ride behind me, and I saw a campground, I would take it because I did feel a lot better and a lot safer sleeping in a place with maybe at least one other person around or some like established kind of area. Because there's certainly dangers up there, and I was certainly vulnerable to whatever kind of came along. But it all always worked out.
So I'm going to set up a scenario for you. It's the middle of the day. You're not tired, and you've already biked like 50, 60 miles. And you know that there's not going to be another campground for like 100 miles. Would you keep going, or would you stop at the campground?
Well, for me, 160 is too far for one day. So I would probably take that campground because knowing the next day was 100 miles, 100 miles would be a good day. That would be a good full solid day.
Hmm.
So I would stop early that day, and I would sketch. I would like fill. All right, great. I've got an afternoon to make some art, and I would make maybe two or three paintings, and I'd be like, cool. Now I can like get ahead on that and feel like I don't just because I wouldn't just sit around. You were talking about time management. It is a very tricky kind of thing to fill because you've got to take care of so many different things. You got your food and your health, the bike, you've got art and videos, and then you also like want to enjoy it. You want to take time for all these other things. And so I always plan these types of trips. I mean, I've only done two of them so far, but I always plan them for May, June, July, because those are the longest days of the year, and that's what I really I want. I want to get as much daylight as I can. I don't ride at night. Just it's just too dangerous for me. But so I'm always going to ride in May, June, July, and get you know. People say, "Oh, how do you ride all that distance in one day?" And I break it down and I say, "I'm not riding that fast. I'm just taking my time, taking the entire sunrise to sunset period, and see what you can do with that."
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, doing it in May, June, July, depending on where you're at, would be miserable. Like if you're in the South or something, like humidity and the
I've
heat and
I've
stuff, that'd be
experienced, yeah.
awful.
I'm never going to I'm never
Yeah.
going back to Mississippi for that exact reason. Yeah,
Yeah, I can only imagine.
yeah,
But I think that's smart too. I mean, especially knowing like if you had to do the Great Divide or
hmm
something, doing it in May, June, July, that I mean, you probably have to deal with the least amount of snow possible.
right.
You get the longest days and everything. So I think that's smart, especially depending on the route. But that's pretty
Yeah.
awesome.
Have you considered doing the Great Divide?
I Yes, I really want to. I'm bad. Like I'm a daydreamer and I think about all these things I want to do. But then as I was saying before, like, hey, I'm a 30-year-old with a job that has insurance and all this stuff. Like, I don't know if I could take off of work that long and or what I would do in that
hmm
interim. So we'll get a little bit off topic here for a second. But the plan is everyone should listen to this podcast, allow me to live off of this, and then I'll get a van and then I'll travel and do interviews and then I'll do bike routes and stuff.
Perfect.
So that'd be
All right. All right.
awesome.
Well, I want to do
Yeah.
that too. That's one of my next rides. Yeah, that's perfect. Actually, so I got my next two rides planned out. One is with Mike Cohen, who you had on, your last guest. He's going to ride from
Yeah,
he's going
awesome
to ride from
guy.
San Diego to Florida, and hopefully I'm going to do that with him. And then I want to do the Great Divide. And then after that, I'm like, well, now my list is pretty full. But um,
Yeah, so well, if you guys need a riding buddy, let me know.
all
I'll be
right, yeah.
there. But yeah, that's awesome. So since we're on the topic of Mike Cohen, how did you meet Mike? Because I thought his story was remarkable and honestly, like his mental toughness and durability is just it's
Yeah,
outstanding. So how did
it's
you
pretty
meet
mind
Mike?
blowing. So we kind of just in this Southern California circle. I guess he started following me on Instagram, probably because of the van life thing, and so he started following me there. And I met him maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago, at a van life gathering, at a van life event, and he came out and he was looking for a van. He was like, "Hey, I want to do this ride, and I'm looking for a van, and you seem to know bikes and vans, and let me chat." And so that's where we met. And then in 2019, he did a ride from California to Florida. And I don't know if he talks about it much or if he wants to redo that ride. He felt like he didn't really do it justice the first time. I think he felt like he wasn't quite.
He wants to test his heart out a little bit.
Yeah, so he's
Yeah.
already done the ride once, but at that point he was maybe not 100%, and he I don't know. But anyway, so I rode with him on that ride one day through Texas and Louisiana, or maybe just Texas. We camped on the beach in Texas.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So I that was probably the second or third time I met him, and we actually did a one day, maybe 60-mile ride in Texas. Um, but so that's how I met him, just through van life and vans and bikes. And so now we're friends, and he said he was kind of looking for next someone else to ride with him on this next ride. So I signed up and said sure thing.
Heck yeah. So for all the listeners out there, if you haven't listened to the last episode, Mike Cohen, and correct me if I'm wrong, but he had leukemia when he was younger. He was in high school.
Hmm.
Leukemia. And then later in life, because of the leukemia, it caused him to have to get a heart transplant. And he got a
Yeah,
heart
mostly because of
transplant.
the
So he biked all the way across the country. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, well, it was the chemotherapy, I believe, that really weakened his heart
Oh,
and kind of
chemo.
set him up for a heart condition. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And then he found a donor. And so he was able to get the heart. And then he wanted to live a very full life with his new heart. So he biked all the way across the country from San Diego to Florida to go meet the donor's family. And it's just a very inspiring story. So you all should definitely check it out. And so I'll read off the stats real quick. I know we just said we're not exactly anti stats, but like stats. But so it was 39 total
We're
days.
all on Strava. Yeah.
It was 39 total days, 32 days ridden, 3,124 miles, 97 miles per day, 150,000 calories consumed, and 50 plus paintings. And so I want to set the stats up real quick because the next part I want to talk about is going to go into this. So on your last day when you woke up, how many more miles did you have to do to get home?
Probably about 80 miles. I woke up in Costa Mesa, which is in Orange County. So Costa Mesa to San Diego, I think it's around 80 miles, maybe 85 miles, something like that.
Okay, so you were like 3,060 some, give or take, miles into this ride.
Hmm.
And you're like, I want to finish at the beach. But your wife, because I think she has a very hysterical sense of humor, is like, no, you should finish at the top of the tallest mountain in San Diego.
Exactly. Yes.
And
Yes.
I read that story and my wife was on the couch and I was like, I audibly went, nuh-uh. And she was like, what? And I had to explain the story. I was like, if you did that to me, I would be so butthurt with you. I was like, that is hysterical.
Yeah, yeah, it was. I mean, it actually took me like a day or two to kind of come around, and because we had chatted about it like 3 or 4 days out, and I was like, where am I going to meet you? Where am I going to finish? And she said, well, the also the backstory is that we had so many friends in town. We had maybe 20 or 30 people and friends who wanted to see me at the finish line. And just logistically, she was saying like getting them all to the beach and you not knowing exactly when you're going to arrive, it's just too much of a logistical nightmare. And I was like, well, fine, fine. So anyway, Mount
I can see that,
Soledad,
yeah.
Mount Soledad is such a tall and steep mountain. I was coming up this last grade, and it was the steepest part of the entire trip. It wasn't the longest mountain or the longest grade, but it was the steepest, just percent grade I had the entire way. The entire trip was in that last quarter mile, and I was hoping to arrive all like fresh and like ready to see all my friends and greet everyone and just like be this beacon of whatever. And I arrived sweaty and panting, and I was like shaking. I got off the bike and I was a little wobbly, and it was something else. But it was still a great. I couldn't have asked for a more perfect way to end the ride. I mean, it was um, just having all those people there and just feeling like everyone. You don't have to like uh, you don't have to congratulate everyone on every accomplishment they do. It's not the way things work. Some people do things for different reasons. You're not into whatever it is, but people really they patted me on the back, and it made it feel like I'd been alone for a very long time, and wasn't always the case. So it was a great way to end the ride.
And I thought it was really cool too that you were able to like give kind of like, I don't want to say a slideshow, but like you got to go over all your paintings and stuff and explain like what the painting was that day and like go over your entire trip to everyone there. Like that's pretty cool to be a part of as well as one of the guests or whatever. So that's pretty awesome. It's a cool experience.
Yeah, yeah, it was cool, and I was doing that throughout the whole trip too. Even way back, whatever, 3 weeks prior, when I was on the ferry going from Alaska to Washington. I was on this ferry with a couple hundred people, and you got nothing else to do, and you just start chatting with people, and I'm like, hey, check out this sketchbook. Let me show you where I've been, and just have a kind of a visual storytelling aid. It just kind of brought the whole thing to life in a really cool way, unique way too.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so the last question I want to go over about your book, and I hope you can tell it, is what's the crazy encounter or the crazy story that you didn't put in the book?
No, I'm not going to tell
Oh, dang. Can you at least tell us what it involved?
No, it's a little cliffhanger. I thought it'd be cool to write. And there was nothing else to tell. There was
Oh,
I know, yeah.
dang.
Other people had asked that too, and I was like, no, I just like creating a little mystery in my writing. That's all. Yeah, it's up to you.
Well,
Leave it up to your
dang.
imagination.
Yeah, it involved a guy in overalls and I don't know. But
Right, 12 dancing women.
and so after you completed your trip, how long did it take you to write and like complete the entire book?
Yeah, once I got back from the trip, I really got to work on the book hard, and I spent basically every waking hour working on the book. So I finished in late July, and then let me see, by July, and then we went to Burning Man for that takes up like 2 weeks of August and September, and then basically the book was then finished by like mid-October. So I worked around the clock basically on it to get this whole thing out in let's say 3 months. But I enjoyed it. It was a lot of hard work to write. I hadn't written since high school or something. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it back then. I still enjoy it. So I'd love to write another book. I've got a few more ideas of what to write, and it's a magical thing that I've been able to combine this kind of small art practice with biking and bookmaking, and I couldn't ask for more. And now if I can do it again, I'd be thrilled to do it again.
Are you going to try to write another book after your next experiences, like maybe with Mike or maybe the Great Divide or something?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to do one on the Great Divide. My wife and I were actually talking about off of a bike doing the El Camino de Santiago. It's a pilgrimage trail in France and Spain, and it passes by all these old cool Spanish churches and through the Spanish countryside and all that kind of stuff. So um, I thought that would be a really cool experience for a book as well. So anything that like kind of has this, I mean, the book has like this linear kind of trajectory where it moves geographically and it moves through time and experiences, and so whatever comes next, I would love to kind of make this the first of many books. If any of your listeners are interested, I've got literally 1,000 other paintings and sketches on drawnthere.com. I have an Etsy site with the same name. So that's where I spend most of my time and share all my work is at drawnthere.com.
Yeah, definitely. And we're going to put all the links in the description, and I'll be posting them on Instagram as
Cool.
well. So definitely go check it
Yeah.
out.
And
And the last
and
thing,
and the book is also available on Amazon too.
oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And so that's another good thing that I can speak to for the book is that not only is it about cycling adventure and it's like very artistic, but also you learn a lot through the entire book. And I thought that was really cool. Did you learn what you put in the book along the way, or did you get home and then do more research about those specific encounters?
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole kind of a art and a science into picking what I'm going to draw or paint that day, and a lot of times I'm looking at it through a lens of like what helps tell this story. You know, how can I tell this story visually through the subject matter that I'm choosing? So, you know, if I choose a mountain, I'm going to talk about that mountain range and both sides, and the north and the south side of it, and how it has changed the topography and the geo and all these things. And so either I'll pick a mountain range or I'll see an old rusty bulldozer on the side of the road, and I'm like, you know what? I'm sure there's a story there, and I might not know exactly what that story is, but I'm going to draw it and paint it, and then I'll do a little bit of research later, and I find out that that bulldozer built the Alaska Highway or something like that, you know, and so that's kind of also how I love telling the story, and I talk about whatever. I love telling the story behind the art almost as much as I love making the art. So it's maybe I'm a visual storyteller, or maybe I just like to. Yeah, I'm always curious too. I'm always there's a podcast that I listen to a lot. It's called 99% Invisible, and it's about art and design and architecture in the world. And one of their mottos is to always read the plaque, and it just says like wherever you are, there's probably a plaque. And you might have wondered about that thing at some point, and most people just walk by. But if you stop and read the plaque, it's going to change the way you look at it every time you walk by. It's going to change the way you see the world, and it's going to change your experiences in all of these places. So I always try to read the plaque. I always try to learn more about it, and just be curious. That's all it comes down to.
Yeah, I'm the worst. Like going to DC or something like that when we have or like New York and we have a full agenda, but I go to a museum. Good luck getting me out of there. I will be reading everything. It's bad. But I thought I do like that aspect about your book too, because I mean, I learned a lot like the squealing pigs from the Alaskan pipeline or the glass from the ocean it was dumped there in what, the 50s or 60s or something?
Yeah, yeah. Back in probably even the 40s and 30s, it was in a glass beach in Fort Bragg. So you know, back before environmental concerns were a big thing, they would take everything from the town and basically the landfill. The ocean became the landfill, and they just pushed it off the cliff. And you know, nature has now done its work and churned everything back into debris, and the metal has rusted away and the wood has rotted away, and one of the only things left is the glass from these old automobiles and bottles and jars and all that kind of stuff, and the glass still washes back up on beach, now polished and beautiful sea glass.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Well, thank you, Mike, for being on. Thank you for sending me your book. It was a pleasure to read it, and it was a pleasure to have you on. I hopefully you need a writing partner for The Great Divide, and I will be there. So thank you for being on the show, and I hope to have you on again.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for having me. And yeah, I'll definitely let you know when the next ride is in the works, and maybe we can plan something together.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thank you.